welcome students. Today we are going to study 10th standard history, chapter number 2, that is growth of nationalism. In the earlier chapter we have already studied first war of independence, what were its causes, and we also saw the consequences of first war of independence. And one of the important consequence of first war of independence was East India Company changing its power to Queen Victoria's empireship, or Queen Victoria being proclaimed as Empress of our country. And there were various changes that were brought in our country with respect to army, how the sophisticated weapons lied only with the British officials, that is British soldiers, and Indian army did not have any responsibility or any authorityship with respect to the arms. Now let us move ahead with the topic, that is growth of nationalism. Let's see through. Now this chapter basically I have divided into two parts. That is, the first part is factors leading to the growth of nationalism. Under this we will be learning the features that were responsible for nationalism, and we will also be studying about the reformers Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Jyotiba Phule and their two contributions. If we see total textbook, total history textbook, in that there are 4 contributions provided, but in the examination only 2 contributions will be evaluated. Alright, and the next part, that will the reformers come under the features that were responsible for nationalism. The next part that we'll be dealing with is the formation of Indian National Congress. Under this we will be learning precursors of Indian National Congress. How did those precursors, that is the political association, led to the formation of Indian National Congress and the 2 sessions of Indian National Congress. Alright, I have explained these two in 2 different videos. Today's video is dedicated to factors leading to the growth of nationalism, and we'll be studying everything under that. Let's move ahead now. Let's see the background. Now why was it important, or how did the national feeling arose among the Indians? Now we have already seen in chapter 1, first war of independence, that there were a lot of revolts, or there were a lot of rebels that took place in different parts of the society. Now these revolts, or these rebels, were basically localized and scattered. We all are aware that India in the past has seen many kingdoms. All right, now British coming in our country, that through East India Company, we saw that there was one rule of one empire. All right, and here we saw that the entire subcontinent coming under it. Okay, but still the loyalty of the people was towards a particular king or kingdom. Now this modern feeling of nationalism was lacking during that period of time. This came up, or this gave rise with the first war of independence. All right, let's move ahead with the understanding of. Now when we see the concepts of nationalism, the self-determination which was learnt from French Revolution, and there was various social reform movements that came in our India, okay, served as an offshoot of modernization that was introduced by British in India as a reaction to Indians to the British colonial policies. All right. This trend also gave the establishment of Indian National Congress in the year 1885, which marked the formal beginning of the organized national movement in our country, that is India. All right, now the political awareness, it also formed, or it also gave rise to various political associations. Again, all these political associations were localized. We required an all India political organization or political association, and this ideology of all India political party or all India political association came up with the formation of Indian National Congress, which will be explained in the second part of my video. All right, let's move ahead with the formation with the factors leading or promoting growth of nationalism. Now, before moving or before understanding the various features that were responsible for the growth of nationalism, we need to understand what is the meaning of the term nationalism. When we talk about nationalism, it refers to the feeling of oneness and the common consciousness that emerges when people living in a common territory share the same historical, political, and cultural background, have the same cultural values, and consider themselves as one nation. Now, this feeling is termed as nationalism. Let's see the first feature under this. The first feature or the factor promoting the growth of nationalism is economic exploitation. Now, Indians realized that the general aim of the British policies in our country was to promote their interest at the cost of welfare of Indians. They were never bothered about the benefit or the welfare that has been provided, or the welfare for the Indians. They were only bothered about their interest in our country. There were various economic discontent that created complications in our country. The first were the peasants. Now, this particular group were the one who bore the maximum pain or the maximum exploitation. The peasants were the main victims of British colonial policies. The government took a large part of their produce in the form of land revenue and other taxes. These exorbitant taxes or these high level of taxes led into the clutches of landlords and moneylenders. So they had to pay a lot of tax for this purpose. Next, we move on to artisans and craftsmen. Now, the British economic policies were against the interest of Indian trade and industry. We were only the source of economic resources or economic exploitation, which means that we have studied in the previous chapter as well that Britain extracted the raw materials from our country, forced us to produce raw materials in our country, took to their motherland with minimal duty. They brought back to our country with minimum duty or nominal duty, or there was no duty levied at all. All right, so this clearly indicates that there was economic exploitation in our country. All right, this policy crippled the artisans and the craftsmen as they were devoid of their sources of livelihood. Why? Because Indian artisans, when they produced or they sold their products, they levied, the British Empire levied heavy taxes, heavy duty charges on those produced items. So this in a way led to the decline of artisans and craftsmen, and they also lost their pioneers, that is the Indian rulers. Let's move ahead with the next one now, the working class. The growth of the modern industries led to the birth of a new social class, and that was the working class. Now, they were also exploited by the factory owners. Now, these factory owners were basically the Englishmen. Alright, all these factors made their political thinking far more significant than their numerical strength. Next, we will move ahead with the educated Indians. Now, the only employment available to the educated Indians was a government service, in which the competition was quite high and the chances of promotions were bleak. were almost invisible. They hoped that British capitalism would help to develop India's productive forces as it had done for the Britain. But instead, the Indians found that the British policies were keeping India economically backward. Even this society felt that their economic salvation or their economic enlightenment actually led in freeing themselves from the British rule. Let's move ahead with the next factor, and the next factor is repressive colonial policy. Now, when we talk about repressive colonial policy, here there was a lot of suppression policies that were introduced by the Viceroy of India, that is Lord Lytton, who ruled our country from 1876 to 1880. Okay, he acted as a catalyst for the growth of national movement in our country. All right, this is the image of Lord Lytton. He was the viceroy of our country. All right, he introduced basically the policies that he introduced. The first one was a Grand Delhi Darbar, which he introduced in the year 1877. Now, here what he did was that he organized a Grand Delhi Darbar for the proclamation of Queen Victoria in our country. Lakhs of rupees were spent on this without even thinking that there were people who were suffering due to the famine in our country. He did not pay attention towards the welfare of those famine hit people. Next we see is he introduced, or he put a ban on vernacular press and the Indian arms. He introduced Vernacular Press Act in the year 1878 and Arms Act again in 1878. According to Vernacular Press Act, vernacular papers were forbidden to publish any material that might excite the feelings of dissatisfaction against the British government. Now, this act was not applicable to the English newspapers. Now, this act was repealed in the year 1882 by Lord Ripon. The next, that is Indian Arms Act. Now, according to the Indian Arms Act, Indians were forbidden to carry or keep arms without license. This act was again not applicable to the British. The third is the age limit for ICS examination, that is Indian Civil Service examination. Now, the maximum age limit of ICS examination was reduced from 21 to 19 years, and thus making it difficult for the Indians to compete for this examination. Next is the import duties on British was removed. Now, we have already studied this in the previous chapter as well, that the import duties on the British textiles were removed. That Britishers only seeked, or Britishers only acquired or took raw materials from our country. Or basically, I would not be wrong in saying that India was only serving as the economic resource, or serving as the raw material for raw material ground for British in our country. All right, it proved harmful for the Indian industries. Next, we move ahead with a very important, that is Ilbert Bill controversy, which was introduced in the year 1883. Now, Sir C.P. Ilbert, Sir Courtenay Peregrine Ilbert, he was a law member of the Viceroy's Council. Now, he prepared a bill which was famously known as Ilbert Bill. Now, why it is stated that it was a controversial bill? Now, in his bill, he provided that, or he stated that the trial of the British or European persons can be taken or can be trialed by the Indians. Now, by this act, the British tried to introduce equality between British and Indian judges in India. Now, of course, we all are aware that if such a thing comes on the basis of equality between India and British, then in that case, of course, this will be resented by the British, and they started a defense association to defend their special privileges. Now, this reaction provoked counter agitation by educated Indians. They realized that that justice and fair play could not be expected where the interest of European community was involved. So, this also provided a stimulus to political agitation and quickened the pace of Indian nationalism. With respect to Ilbert Bill controversy, I will be forwarding the link in the description box. If you want to have a better understanding of Ilbert Bill controversy, then just click on to the description box. There's a link provided there. Click on to the link and you will have the information about Ilbert Bill controversy. Next, we'll move ahead with the third factor promoting to the growth of nationalism is that socio-religious reform movements. Now, socio-religious reform movements in the year in 19th century were great pioneer of the Indian nationalism. Now, the impact of Western education, which led to people understanding of or coming up with the rational thinking, humanitarian and scientific approach to life. They felt that the path to progress lay in the acceptance of the best or the assimilation of the East and the West. Educated Indians here realized that there were a lot of social evil that were practiced in our country, and it was important to reform the society. So they started touching almost every segment of Indian society. In the social sphere, they decided to eradicate social evils from our country. The social evil that were prevalent in our country were caste system, child marriage, dowry system, parda system, sati, and female infanticide. So these educated Indians thought of eradicating or abolishing all these social evils in our country. They even launched crusade against these social legal inequalities in our country. Next, they worked upon the religious sphere. In religious sphere, they thought of eradicating superstitions, idolatry, polytheism, hereditary priesthood. Now, when we talk about idolatry, that is worshipping the idols. Polytheism, that is worshipping many gods. These movements are fought for individual liberty and social equality. Now, there were many prominent movements that were started under various social reformers, that is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Swami Vivekanand, Jyotiba Phule, etc. Out of these, we'll be learning two social reformers here. The first one under that is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a very prominent social as well as religious reformer of the 19th century. He studied Hindu and Sanskrit philosophy, Quran, Persian and Arabic literature as well. He is often known as father of Indian Renaissance and the prophet of Indian nationalism, the title that was given to him by Rabindranath Tagore. Let us learn more about him in detail. Now, his contribution towards religion, his approach towards religion. Firstly, he believed that all the religions are one. All the religions are equal. In the year 1809, he wrote Gift to Monotheist. Monotheist means believing in one God. Alright, he put forth his view in this that beliefs of many gods and for worship of a single god only. He strongly held the view that all the principal ancient texts of the Hindus preached monotheism, that is worship of one god. He wrote this book in Persian. In the year 1814, he started Amitya Sabha, which was against the worship of idols or basically idolatry, and followed ahead or moved ahead with the policy of one god. He also tried to prove that there were many rituals in our country which were meaningless. In the year 1828, he founded Brahmo Sabha, which was later on known as Brahmo Samaj. Now, this Brahmo Samaj attacked on monotheism, or basically promoted monotheism. It condemned idol worship, and it emphasized on prayer, meditation, charity, morality, and bonds of unity. That is promoting fraternity in our country. Next, we move ahead with social reforms. Now, when we talk about social reforms, that is, there were a lot of rigidity in our country. Even he realized that the society was full of social evil. So he started up with the campaign for campaign against the social evils, the practices that were practiced in our country. That is sati system, parda system, child marriages. He also worked for the rights of widows to remarry. Okay, now this effort of Raja Ram Mohan Roy was supported by William Bentinck, who was the Governor General of India. He passed a law in the year 1829 putting a ban on sati. He also promoted or he also condemned subjugation of women. He promoted that a status of a woman can be raised by putting forward or by demanding that they should be given the right of inheritance and property. Next one is he served as the pioneer of Indian journalism. He published various papers, various articles, various journals in Bengali, English, Hindi, and Persian languages, which was very important, or which was the common language of the people, so that people can understand. And through these newspapers or journals, he spread scientific, literary, and political knowledge among the Indians and raised the public opinion among the Indians. He also spoke about the current topics of current interest and to represent popular demands and the grievances that were faced by the Indians to the British government. In the year 1821, he started a weekly, that is Samvad Kaumudi in Bengali. And in the year 1821, he also started a paper in Persian called Mirat ul Akbar. Let's see the next point, that's political rights. Now, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was the initiator of public agitation for demanding the political and other rights. He always demanded the abolition of East India Company's trading rights and heavy export duties on Indian goods. He also demanded for the separation of executive from the judiciary. Next, we move on to the next social reformer, that is Jyotiba Phule. Now, Jyotiba Phule, often known as urban educated member of a so-called low caste. That is, he belonged to the low caste. He was aware, he was educated, and he was aware through his personal experiences that that the depressed class was suffering a lot when East India Company or when the British rule was prevalent in our country. So he always worked for the upliftment of women. He worked for reforming the caste structure that was prevalent in our country. He also worked for the social justice for the lower caste in our society. Let us see the first contribution of Jyotiba Phule, that is upliftment of women. He realized that the upliftment of women can take place only when allowing them to educate, allowing them to step out of their house. So he worked for women's superiority. He always considered women to be superior to men, and he maintained the status of superiority. He wanted to provide education to women. So he started this by educating his own wife. In the year 1851, he started first girls' school in Pune, where Savitribai Phule started educating the girls. In the year 1854, he also started schools for untouchables and a private orphanage for women. Okay, because he realized that there were a lot of atrocities happening against the untouchables in our society, so he thought of uplifting the untouchables as well. He wanted to liberate the depressed classes, that is the lower class. Let's move ahead with the next contribution, that is caste structure. Now he considered, or he was aware that there were caste structure prevalent in our country, which was according to him the epitome of slavery. He realized that this bifurcation, or this discrimination on the basis of caste is promoting slavery in our country. He wrote a book called Gulamgiri, where he described the conditions of the lower caste, where and also stated about the hardships and the distress that was felt by the lower caste. Next, we move ahead with the social justice for lower caste. He always strived hard for providing social justice to the lower caste, because he was aware that in society the lower caste people were suffering to a larger extent. He founded Satyashodak Samaj in the year 1873, which provided social justice to the weaker sections of the society. Now, these social religious reform movements in our country contributed to the onset of Indian nationalism in various ways. Like, for example, Swami Dayanand and Swami Vivekananda, as a social reformer, proclaimed the superiority of Indian culture and civilization. The reformers also condemned untouchability and the caste system. The ideas of brotherhood or equality attracted the so-called lower caste. The reformers taught people not to ignore the importance of women, but to recognize the superiority of women who could participate in the national movement as well. They protested against the British domination of India. Now, Swami Dayanand Saraswati was the first to use the word Swaraj and to raise the slogan, India is for Indians. Let's move ahead with the fourth point under factors leading to the growth of nationalism, which is the last point under the factors responsible for the growth of nationalism in our country. Now, there were large number of papers which were started in the later half of the 19th century, and some of the prominent newspapers were Amrit Bazar Patrika, the Bengali, the Tribune, the Times of India, the Hindu, and the Statesman in English, along with various vernacular papers as well. Now, these papers were responsible for spreading the message of patriotism, liberty, freedom, equality, home rule, and independence among the Indians. The press also criticized the unjust policies of the British government, which exposed the true nature of the British rule in our country. It also made possible to the people aware about the happenings around the world. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like the explanation, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos.